My name is Samantha. I'm 28 years old, and the day before my wedding, my sister Allison announced she was pregnant with my fiancé Jackson's baby. The room went silent as my perfect world shattered into a million pieces. After 3 years of building a life with the man I thought was my soulmate, everything was destroyed by the one person I never expected to betray me. But as I pieced together the truth, I realized her entire pregnancy was an elaborate lie. Let me know where you're watching from, hit that subscribe button, and settle in, because this story of betrayal and revenge might be the most shocking family drama you'll hear all year. Growing up, Allison and I were inseparable. With only 2 years between us, we shared everything: clothes, secrets, dreams. Our childhood home in Chicago was filled with laughter and the chaos that comes with two girls navigating life together. We built blanket forts in the living room, created elaborate make-believe worlds in our backyard, and defended each other fiercely at school. My parents, Barbara and Michael, often commented on how lucky they were to have daughters who got along so well. But as we entered our teenage years, something shifted. Small competitions crept into our relationship. When I made the cheerleading squad, Allison suddenly became interested in gymnastics and quickly surpassed my athletic abilities. When I brought home an A on a difficult science project, Allison would somehow manage an A+ the following semester. It was subtle at first, the kind of normal sibling rivalry our parents dismissed with a laugh. College drove us further apart. I chose Northwestern to study marketing, while Allison selected DePaul for communications, my original first choice that I'd mentioned for years. During those 4 years, our phone calls became less frequent, our holiday interactions more strained. I noticed how Allison would casually mention the boys I liked were not really your type, or how my career aspirations were a bit predictable. Still, I clung to the belief that sisters have ups and downs, and eventually, we'd find our way back to that close bond. After graduation, I landed a job at a prestigious marketing firm while Allison jumped between various communications roles, never quite finding her footing. Our parents worried about her instability, which only seemed to fuel her resentment toward me. When I purchased my first apartment, Allison commented that I was so conventional, rushing into mortgage debt. When I earned a promotion, she questioned if it was because they needed to meet their quota of female executives. Then 3 years ago, I met Jackson at a charity gala my firm was hosting. He was the architect who had designed the event space, and we connected instantly over our shared love of mid-century design and travel documentaries. Jackson was everything I'd hoped to find: intelligent, ambitious, kind, and with a sense of humor that made even mundane errands feel like adventures. With his dark curly hair, warm brown eyes, and the ability to remember even the smallest details about people he cared about, Jackson quickly became the center of my world. Our relationship progressed naturally. After 6 months, we were spending nearly every night together. At 1 year, we took a trip to Japan that confirmed what I already knew: this was the man I wanted to build a life with. When he proposed during a weekend getaway to Michigan's wine country at sunset, I didn't hesitate to say yes. The oval diamond set in rose gold was exactly what I would have chosen myself. When I told my family about the engagement, my parents were ecstatic. My father immediately shook Jackson's hand and welcomed him to the family. My mother started talking about venue options before we'd even finished our celebration dinner. Allison, however, offered a tight smile and a brief congratulations before excusing herself to take a phone call. When she returned, she'd composed herself enough to ask questions about the proposal, but I noticed her eyes never quite met mine. As wedding planning began, I naturally asked Allison to be my maid of honor. Despite our differences, she was still my sister, and I couldn't imagine anyone else standing beside me. She accepted with what seemed like genuine enthusiasm, and for a while, things improved between us. She helped schedule venue tours and accompanied me to catering tastings. She even organized a beautiful engagement party with thoughtful details that showed she'd been paying attention to my preferences. My best friend Melody, whom I'd met in college, was also part of the bridal party. She and Allison had never quite clicked, and Melody occasionally mentioned that something felt off about my sister's sudden involvement in the wedding. "I'm just saying, she's never been this interested in your life before," Melody pointed out during a bridesmaid dress fitting. I dismissed her concerns, grateful to have my sister back in my life and wanting to believe her enthusiasm was genuine. Jackson had met Allison several times before the engagement, primarily at family gatherings. He'd always been polite and engaging with her, but there hadn't been any particular connection between them. Jackson's own family lived on the West Coast, so he valued the closeness of mine despite the occasional tensions. His best friend Tyler often joined us for Sunday dinners at my parents' house, becoming an extended part of our family circle. As the months of planning continued, Jackson and I secured our dream venue, the Botanical Gardens where we'd had our third date. We chose a date in early June, when the roses would be in full bloom. Everything was falling into place, from the caterer who perfectly executed our desired menu to the photographer whose style captured exactly the warm, intimate feeling we wanted for our wedding memories. The only hiccup came when Allison suggested a last-minute change to the bridesmaid dresses, claiming the sage green we'd selected washed out her complexion. After a tense conversation, she reluctantly agreed to the original choice. It seemed like such a minor issue at the time, just a bride and her maid of honor having a typical wedding planning disagreement. Looking back now, I realize it was the first sign of the storm that was brewing, one that would eventually destroy what should have been the happiest day of my life. With 1 month left before the wedding, preparations intensified. My calendar was filled with final fittings, meetings with vendors, and last-minute details that needed attention. Despite the stress, I was floating on a cloud of happiness. Until I started noticing strange interactions between Allison and Jackson. It began at my parents' Sunday dinner. Typically, Allison would spend these gatherings talking to our mother or scrolling through her phone. But this particular evening, she positioned herself next to Jackson at the table, laughing a bit too loudly at his jokes and touching his arm whenever she spoke. When I mentioned it later that night, Jackson shrugged it off. "She's probably just getting more comfortable with me since I'm about to become her brother-in-law," he reasoned. A few days later, I stopped by Jackson's apartment unannounced with lunch, something I'd done countless times before. As I approached his door, I heard him on the phone. "I can't talk about this right now," he said in a hushed tone. "Sam could show up anytime." When I knocked, there was a moment of silence before he answered, his phone nowhere in sight. When I asked who he was talking to, he mentioned a difficult client, but the explanation felt rehearsed. That same week, I noticed several text notifications on Jackson's phone from Allison. One preview read, "We need to discuss what happened." When I asked about it, Jackson explained that Allison was planning a surprise bridal shower and wanted his input. The explanation made sense, but something in his voice wavered just enough to plant a seed of doubt. The incident at the final dress fitting was harder to dismiss. Allison had arrived late, claiming traffic had been terrible. While I was changing back into my clothes, the boutique owner mentioned how lovely Allison had looked in the gown. Confused, I asked for clarification. Apparently, Allison had arrived early and asked to try on my wedding dress, claiming she was considering a similar style for herself. The thought of my sister wearing my wedding dress before me sent a chill down my spine. "You tried on my wedding dress?" I confronted her in the boutique parking lot. Allison rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Sam. I'm thinking about getting engaged soon, and I wanted to see how that silhouette would look on me. It's not like I'm stealing your thunder." "Getting engaged? You haven't mentioned you're even dating someone seriously," I replied, increasingly confused. "There's a lot you don't know about my life," she said with a strange smile before changing the subject. During the final menu tasting, Allison peppered Jackson with questions about his preferences. What was his favorite breakfast food? Did he prefer sweet or savory snacks when working late? Was he allergic to any medications? The question seemed odd and overly personal, but Jackson answered politely, giving me a puzzled look when Allison wasn't watching. "Have you noticed Allison acting weird lately?" I asked Melody over coffee that weekend. "She's been so focused on Jackson," asking him all these personal questions and texting him about wedding stuff instead of talking to me. Melody set down her cup. Honestly?
Yes.
But I didn't want to say anything because you've been so happy about her involvement in the wedding. You don't think. She trailed off, clearly uncomfortable.
What?
That something's going on between them. I laughed, though it came out strained.
No way.
Jackson would never. And Allison. Well, she's competitive, but she wouldn't cross that line. You're probably right, Melody conceded. It's just pre-wedding stress making everyone act strange. I wanted to believe that was true. But that night, I couldn't sleep, replaying moments from the past few weeks in my mind. The hushed phone conversations, the unusual questions, the way Allison's eyes followed Jackson around the room at family gatherings. Still, I told myself I was overreacting. This was my sister and my fiancé, the two people I trusted most in the world besides my parents. The following weekend, Jackson and I had dinner with his best friend Tyler, who mentioned something that made my stomach drop. Allison sure has been reaching out to me a lot about the wedding, he said casually. Asked me all about Jackson's college days, his exes, even what kind of engagement ring he had initially considered for you. Jackson frowned. She's been calling you? She never mentioned that. Tyler nodded. Yeah, said she was putting together some kind of video tribute for the reception and wanted background info. I figured you knew. There was no video tribute planned for our reception. On the drive home, I finally voiced my concerns to Jackson. Do you think Allison has been acting strange lately? Especially around you. He was quiet for a moment too long. I've noticed she's been more attentive, but I assumed she was just taking her maid of honor duties seriously. He reached for my hand. Sam, if something's bothering you, just talk to her. I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation. I nodded, but the knot in my stomach tightened. The next day, I called Allison, intending to have an honest conversation. But when I mentioned her increased interest in Jackson, she became defensive. Wow, are you actually accusing me of what? Flirting with your fiancé? That's rich, Sam. I'm trying to be supportive and get to know the guy who's joining our family, and you're turning it into something inappropriate. This is exactly why I've always felt like I can't win with you. Her words made me feel guilty and paranoid. Was I letting wedding stress turn me into a bridezilla, suspicious of even my own sister? I apologized, and Allison graciously accepted, suggesting we have lunch later that week to clear the air. But she canceled at the last minute, citing a work emergency. As the wedding drew closer, I tried to focus on the joy ahead rather than the unease that had settled in my chest. Jackson and I finalized our honeymoon plans to Portugal, and I threw myself into last-minute wedding details. But the warning signs continued to flash like neon lights, and I was running out of reasonable explanations to quiet my growing fears. The final week before the wedding arrived with a flurry of activity. Guests were confirming their attendance, welcome bags needed assembling, and last-minute adjustments to the seating chart had to be made. Through it all, Allison had become increasingly difficult to reach. She missed our scheduled time to stuff welcome bags, claiming her phone had died. She was an hour late to the final meeting with the florist, offering no explanation at all. Has Allison talked to you about the rehearsal dinner? My mother asked 3 days before the wedding. She was supposed to help me confirm the final head count with the restaurant. I've barely seen her this week, I admitted. Have you tried calling her? Multiple times. She texts back but never answers her phone. Later that day, I stopped by Allison's apartment unannounced, concerned about her disappearing act. As I approached her door, I heard her voice through the partially open window. No, you don't understand. It has to be this weekend. I can't wait any longer, she was saying, her voice tense. Everything is ready. Trust me, this will work. When I knocked, there was a scrambling sound before she opened the door, clearly surprised to see me. Sam, what are you doing here? I came to check on you. You've been MIA all week, and we have a ton of last-minute wedding stuff to handle. Her apartment was unusually messy, with shopping bags stuffed hastily into a closet. A notebook lay open on the coffee table, which she quickly closed as I entered. Sorry, work has been insane, she said, not meeting my eyes.
But I'm all yours now.
What do you need help with? We spent an hour going through the rehearsal dinner details, but Allison seemed distracted, checking her phone constantly and steering the conversation away from anything wedding-related. When I asked about her +1 for the wedding, a date she had mentioned bringing several times, she became evasive. Oh, that fell through. I'll be coming solo. I thought you were seeing someone seriously. You mentioned possibly getting engaged soon when we were at my dress fitting. She waved her hand dismissively. It wasn't as serious as I thought. Can we talk about something else? That night was Jackson's bachelor party, a low-key evening of poker and drinks with his friends at Tyler's apartment. Meanwhile, I had a spa night with my bridesmaids at a downtown hotel. Allison arrived late, claimed she wasn't feeling well after an hour, and left early. Melody watched her go with narrowed eyes. Is it just me, or is she acting super sketchy? Melody asked once Allison was gone. Something's definitely off, I agreed. But I can't figure out what. When Jackson returned from his bachelor party the next morning, something about him had changed. He was quieter, more withdrawn, and kept checking his phone. When I asked how the night had gone, his answers were vague. Just the usual. Cards, drinks, guy talk. Nothing exciting. I tried to push away my concern and focus on our rehearsal dinner, scheduled for that evening. But as I was getting ready, my phone pinged with a text from Tyler. Can we talk before the rehearsal? It's important. We met at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the restaurant. Tyler looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with his cup. I'm not sure if I should tell you this, he began, but something weird happened at the bachelor party last night. Allison showed up. My heart sank.
What? Why?
She said she was dropping off a surprise gift for Jackson. But then she stuck around, having drinks, sitting next to Jackson all night. Some of the guys thought it was strange, but no one wanted to say anything. Then I overheard them talking outside when Jackson was getting some air. What did they say? I barely recognized my own voice. Tyler hesitated. She was standing really close to him, saying something about how they needed to talk about their situation before things went any further. Jackson looked upset and told her it wasn't the time or place. Then they noticed me and stopped talking. I felt sick. Did you ask Jackson about it? I tried this morning, but he brushed it off, said she was just being dramatic about some wedding details. Sam, I've known Jackson for 15 years. He's never been a cheater or a liar. But something's not right here. I thanked Tyler for his honesty and somehow made it through the rest of the afternoon in a fog of anxiety. I tried calling Jackson twice, but he didn't pick up, texting that he was with his parents who had just flown in and would see me at the rehearsal dinner. That night, I arrived at the upscale Italian restaurant my parents had chosen for our rehearsal dinner. The private room was beautifully decorated with flowers in our wedding colors, and a slideshow of Jackson and me played on a screen at the front. Family members and the wedding party mingled, cocktails in hand, while I plastered on a smile and tried to quiet the storm in my mind. Jackson arrived with his parents, greeting me with a kiss that felt somehow different. You look beautiful, he said, but his eyes kept darting around the room. Is everything okay? I asked. You seem nervous. Just wedding jitters, he replied too quickly. Where's Allison? Isn't she supposed to give a toast tonight? The mention of my sister sent another wave of unease through me. She should be here soon. But as the dinner began and guests took their seats, Allison was nowhere to be found. My mother checked her phone repeatedly, becoming increasingly agitated. This is so irresponsible of her, she whispered. She knows how important tonight is. We delayed the first course by 15 minutes, but eventually had to proceed without her. I tried to focus on the warm wishes from our guests, the heartfelt toast from my father, the way Jackson's mother embraced me and called me the daughter she'd always wanted. But my sister's absence loomed large, another piece in the puzzling behavior of the past weeks. Just as dessert was being served, the restaurant door swung open, and Allison finally appeared. My initial relief quickly gave way to confusion. She was wearing a form-fitting dress that showcased what appeared to be a small but noticeable baby bump. Her hand rested protectively over her stomach as she made her way to the front of the room, all eyes following her dramatic entrance. "Sorry I'm late, everyone," she announced with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I had an important appointment that couldn't wait. But I'm here now, and I have an announcement to make before tomorrow's big day." The room fell silent as my sister took a deep breath, her eyes locking with mine for one chilling moment before she turned to address our stunned guests. "I think my sister deserves to know the truth before she makes the biggest mistake of her life." The rehearsal dinner had been everything I dreamed of. The intimate restaurant bathed in candlelight, tables adorned with miniature arrangements of roses and peonies, the gentle clink of glasses as loved ones gathered to celebrate our upcoming marriage. My father had just finished a toast that left everyone misty-eyed, sharing stories of my childhood and welcoming Jackson to the family. Despite Allison's absence and my lingering concerns, I'd begun to relax, thinking perhaps my worries were simply pre-wedding anxiety. Then Allison made her entrance, and time seemed to slow to an excruciating crawl. "I think my sister deserves to know the truth before she makes the biggest mistake of her life," Allison declared, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent room. Jackson stiffened beside me, his face draining of color. "Allison," my mother hissed, "this is not the time or place for whatever this is." But my sister continued, her hand still resting on what appeared to be a small pregnant belly. "I've been trying to find the right moment to say this, but there isn't one. The truth is..." She paused, her eyes darting between me and Jackson. "I'm pregnant. And Jackson is the father." The room exploded in gasps and murmurs. My father stood up, so quickly his chair toppled backward. Jackson's mother covered her mouth in shock. And I felt as though I'd been plunged into ice water, unable to breathe, unable to process the words hanging in the air. "That's not possible," Jackson finally said, his voice strained. "Allison, what are you doing?" "Don't deny it," she shot back, tears forming in her eyes. "We both know what happened. I didn't want to do this here, but Sam needs to know before tomorrow." My vision blurred as I looked at Jackson, searching his face for denial, for outrage, for anything that would tell me this was all some cruel joke. Instead, I found confusion and panic, not the reaction of an innocent man.
When?
I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper. "When did this supposedly happen?" Allison's gaze hardened. "Does it matter? It happened, and now there's a baby involved. Your wedding needs to be called off." Melody was suddenly at my side, her arm around my shoulders. "This is insane. You're lying, Allison." "Why would I lie about something like this?" Allison shot back, tears streaming down her face now. "Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to fall for my sister's fiancé? To get pregnant right before their wedding?" Jackson stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "We need to talk about this privately. Not here, not like this." But it was too late. The damage was done. I looked around at the horrified faces of our guests. Jackson's parents huddled together in shock, my mother weeping silently, Tyler staring at Jackson with disbelief. The beautiful evening had transformed into a nightmare from which there was no waking. I stood up, my legs threatening to give way beneath me. "I need air," I mumbled, pushing past Melody and heading for the door. Behind me, I could hear raised voices, my father demanding answers from Jackson, Allison sobbing dramatically, Jackson insisting they needed to talk about this rationally. Outside in the cool night air, I gulped in deep breaths, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Melody followed me out, along with my mother's sister, Aunt Joanne. "Samantha, honey, don't believe her," Aunt Joanne urged. "This isn't the first time Allison has pulled something like this for attention." But the doubt had already taken root. All the strange behavior of the past weeks suddenly made terrible sense. The secretive conversations, Allison's unusual interest in Jackson, his nervous demeanor since the bachelor party. Had they really betrayed me in the worst possible way? Jackson burst through the restaurant doors a moment later, his face ashen. "Sam, please, you have to listen to me. This isn't what it looks like." "Then what is it?" I demanded, tears flowing freely now. "Because it looks like you slept with my sister and got her pregnant." We didn't," he stammered. "I don't know what she's talking about." Yes, she came to the bachelor party last night, and we talked outside briefly, but nothing happened between us, ever. I swear to you. Then why is she saying these things? Why does she look pregnant? My voice rose with each question. I don't know. Jackson ran his hands through his hair in frustration. Maybe she's making it up. Maybe she is pregnant by someone else, I don't know.
But it's not mine, Sam.
It can't be. Inside the restaurant, chaos continued. Through the windows, I could see my father pointing accusingly at Allison, who was now sitting and being comforted by a few relatives who had always taken her side in family disputes. The wedding party stood in awkward clusters, whispering among themselves. I can't do this, I said finally. I can't get married tomorrow, with this hanging over us. Sam, no, Jackson pleaded, reaching for my hands. Don't let her do this to us. We can postpone if you need time, but please, don't end this over a lie. But I pulled away, the engagement ring on my fingers suddenly feeling like a heavy burden. I need time to think. I can't be around either of you right now. I turned to Melody. Can you take me home? She nodded, shooting a disappointed look at Jackson before leading me to her car. As we drove away, I caught a final glimpse of the scene. Jackson standing alone on the sidewalk, my parents emerging from the restaurant looking shell-shocked, and Allison being escorted to a taxi, one hand still protectively cradling her apparent baby bump. Back in my apartment, Melody helped me out of my dress and made tea while I sat in numb silence on the couch. The wedding was less than 24 hours away. Guests had flown in from across the country. Thousands of dollars had been spent on flowers, food, music, and photography. And now, it was all falling apart because of an unthinkable betrayal. What am I going to do? I whispered as Melody handed me a steaming mug. First, we need to figure out if she's telling the truth, Melody said practically. Because something about this doesn't add up. My phone buzzed incessantly with messages from family members, bridesmaids, and Jackson. I couldn't bear to read any of them. Instead, I curled up on the couch, trying to remember when Jackson and Allison could have possibly had an opportunity to betray me. They were rarely alone together, always in family settings or group situations. Unless the bachelor party, I said suddenly. Tyler said Allison showed up there. Melody frowned. That's weird timing though, isn't it? If she's showing already, she would have gotten pregnant months ago, not last night. It was a good point, one I hadn't considered in my shock. I tried to remember how far along Allison appeared to be, maybe 3 or 4 months, which would mean she would have gotten pregnant around the time we sent out save the dates, I realized. But that doesn't make sense either. Jackson and I were together almost every day during that period, working on wedding invitations and meeting vendors. As the night wore on, more inconsistencies emerged. My mother called, her voice tight with anger. Samantha, I don't know what's going on, but your father and I don't believe Allison for a second. She's refusing to answer any questions about the pregnancy, when it happened, how far along she is, whether she's seen a doctor. She just keeps saying it's complicated and that you and Jackson know the truth. Another call came from Jackson's mother, who had always been kind but reserved with me. Now, her voice was fierce with loyalty. My son is many things, Samantha, but he is not a cheater. And he loves you more than anything in this world. Whatever is happening here, please don't make any decisions tonight. Give him a chance to clear his name. By midnight, the wedding was unofficially on hold. Melody had contacted the venue and key vendors to explain there was a family emergency, buying us time to figure out what to do. Jackson had stopped calling after I texted him that I needed space, sending only one final message. I love you. I didn't do this. When you're ready to talk, I'll be here. Allison, meanwhile, had gone completely silent. According to my parents, she had returned to her apartment and wasn't answering her door or phone. The dramatic announcement followed by her sudden disappearance only added to the suspicion growing in the back of my mind. As I finally fell into an exhausted sleep in the early hours of the morning, one thought kept circling. What if this entire pregnancy was a lie? And if it was, how far would Allison go to maintain it? I woke up the next morning, what should have been my wedding day, with swollen eyes and a hollowness in my chest that made it hard to breathe. Melody had stayed over, sleeping on my couch, and I could hear her quiet movements in the kitchen as she made coffee. My phone showed 27 missed calls and 49 text messages, but I couldn't bring myself to look at any of them yet. Instead, I lay in bed staring at the wedding dress hanging on my closet door. The delicate lace and pearl details that had once made my heart soar now seemed to mock me. In just a few hours, I should have been getting my hair and makeup done, surrounded by bridesmaids and champagne. Instead, I was trying to piece together whether my sister and fiancé had betrayed me in the most devastating way possible. "I made coffee and toast," Melody said, appearing in the doorway. "And I think we need a plan." I sat up slowly. "A plan for what? Canceling the wedding?" She shook her head, her expression determined. "A plan to figure out what's really going on. Because this whole situation stinks, Sam. Allison's story doesn't add up." "But she looked pregnant," I said, the image of my sister's rounded belly still fresh in my mind. "Looking pregnant and being pregnant are two different things," Melody pointed out. "And being pregnant and carrying Jackson's baby are even more different. We need facts, not drama." She was right. Despite my heartbreak, the analytical part of my brain had been working through the night, cataloging inconsistencies and questions. If I was going to make the biggest decision of my life, whether to marry Jackson or call everything off, I needed the truth. After a shower and coffee, I felt marginally more human. I started by reading through my messages, skipping past the sympathetic notes from bridesmaids and relatives to focus on key people. Jackson had sent several pleading texts reiterating his innocence and asking to meet. Tyler had written a long message detailing his observations from the bachelor party, emphasizing that Jackson and Allison had never been alone together for more than a few minutes. My parents reported that Allison still wasn't answering her door, but had texted my mother that she was resting on doctor's orders. "Doctor's orders," I repeated to Melody. "Has she ever mentioned seeing an obstetrician? Being pregnant? Any symptoms at all?" Melody shook her head. "Not to me. And wouldn't that have come up during bridesmaid dress fittings? Pregnant women usually need alterations." Another inconsistency. I grabbed a notebook and started writing down questions and observations. When did the alleged affair happen? How far along did Allison appear to be? Who was her doctor? Why announce the pregnancy so dramatically at the rehearsal dinner rather than privately? By noon, I decided I needed to talk to Jackson face-to-face. Whatever had happened, I deserved answers from him directly. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe near my apartment, neutral territory, where we could talk without family interference. He arrived looking as though he hadn't slept at all, dark circles under his eyes and his usually neat hair disheveled. When he saw me, his expression was a mixture of hope and fear. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting down across from me. "I need the truth, Jackson. All of it. Did you ever have feelings for Allison?" He shook his head emphatically. "Never. Not once. She's your sister, and honestly, she's never been particularly kind to me until recently. I've always just tolerated her for your sake." "Did something happen at the bachelor party? Or any other time?" "Nothing romantic or sexual ever," he insisted. "At the bachelor party, she showed up uninvited with a gift basket, which was already strange. Then she kept trying to get me alone, saying she needed to talk to me about something important. When we finally stepped outside for a minute, she started saying cryptic things about how she knew we had a connection and that she could tell I wasn't really happy with you." My stomach clenched. "And what did you say?" "I told her she was completely wrong and that I was madly in love with you." That's when she got angry and said something like, "You'll regret this," before storming off. Tyler saw part of it, which is probably why he was so uncomfortable. "But Sam, I swear on my life, that was it. I've never touched your sister." His account matched what Tyler had told me, which lent it credibility. But it still didn't explain Allison's pregnancy claim or appearance. "If what you're saying is true, why would she make this up? Why now?" Jackson ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know. Maybe she's not thinking clearly. Or maybe—" He hesitated. Maybe what? Maybe she's been planning this for a while. You've told me about how competitive she's been with you over the years. How she always wanted what you had. The thought sent a chill through me. Could Allison's jealousy have escalated to this level? To fake a pregnancy and destroy my wedding? After talking with Jackson, I felt marginally better, but still confused. I decided to dig deeper into Allison's recent activities. Melody and I started with her social media accounts, looking for any clues about her supposed pregnancy. Look at this, Melody said, pointing to a purchase Allison had shared in her Instagram stories 2 months ago, a subscription box of loose-fitting tunics and dresses. At the time, it had seemed like a normal fashion post, but now it took on new significance. And here, I said, finding an Amazon review Allison had left for a book titled Coping with Morning Sickness. The review was dated just 3 weeks ago. We continued our investigation, discovering more breadcrumbs Allison had apparently left deliberately, a check-in at a women's clinic, though not specifically an OB/GYN, photos where she was suddenly wearing only loose clothing, comments about being so tired lately on friends' posts. But the smoking gun came when Melody remembered something. Didn't you tell me Allison used her credit card to buy the bridesmaids' gifts last month, and you were going to pay her back? I nodded, pulling up my Venmo history with Allison. She had indeed charged me for the bridesmaids' gifts, monogrammed jewelry boxes, and I had reimbursed her. With her Venmo username, I could see her public transactions. And there it was, a payment 3 weeks ago to someone named Brandy with the description Special FX Supplies followed by a pregnant woman emoji. Clicking on Brandy's profile revealed she was a theater makeup artist specializing in prosthetics. Oh my God, I whispered. She faked the whole thing. But we needed more concrete proof. I called Tyler, asking if he could meet us and bring his laptop. An hour later, he arrived at my apartment, confused but willing to help. I need to see any photos or videos from the bachelor party, I explained, specifically of Allison. Tyler pulled up several group photos from the evening. In most, Allison was careful to be photographed from the chest up. But in one candid shot, captured as she was sitting down, something was visible at her feet, a large tote bag with the logo of a theatrical supply company. Can you zoom in on that? I asked, my heart racing. Tyler enlarged the image, revealing the bag's contents partially visible, what looked like packaging for a prosthetic pregnancy belly. She brought it with her, Melody realized. She was probably planning to make the announcement at the bachelor party, but changed her mind. We continued gathering evidence, calling bridesmaids who had interacted with Allison recently, checking timestamps on photos and messages, and creating a timeline of her deception. It appeared she had been planning this for at least 2 months, gradually building a fake pregnancy narrative while simultaneously trying to create doubt about Jackson's fidelity. The final piece came when we contacted the restaurant where the rehearsal dinner had been held. The manager remembered Allison arriving early, asking to use their restroom. A staff member had noticed her carrying a large bag into the bathroom and emerging 20 minutes later looking very different. By evening, I had enough evidence to be confident that Allison's pregnancy was entirely fabricated, a desperate attempt to steal Jackson and ruin my wedding. The relief of knowing Jackson hadn't betrayed me was overwhelming, but it was quickly replaced by a new kind of pain. My own sister had tried to destroy my happiness out of jealousy and spite. What do I do now? I asked Melody and Tyler as we sat surrounded by the evidence of Allison's deception. You could still get married tomorrow, Tyler suggested. Most of the vendors are on hold, not canceled. I shook my head. No, it's too soon. Too many people have heard Allison's accusations. We need to clear Jackson's name first. I took a deep breath. And I need to confront Allison. Not alone, Melody insisted. No, I agreed. I have a better idea. A family dinner tomorrow night. Everyone who was at the rehearsal dinner, my parents, Jackson, his parents, you too, and Allison. A confrontation?
Tyler asked.
An exposure. I corrected, a plan forming in my mind. If Allison wants drama, I'll give her the final act she never expected. I spent the rest of what should have been my wedding day finalizing my plan. My parents agreed to host a family reconciliation dinner at their home the following evening, though they were skeptical about the purpose. I asked them to invite Allison without revealing that I would be there with Jackson. They were confused but trusted my judgment enough to go along with it. "Are you sure about this?" Jackson asked when I called to explain the plan. "Wouldn't it be easier to just tell your parents what we've discovered and let them handle Allison?" "No," I said firmly. "She humiliated us publicly. She tried to destroy our relationship and ruin our wedding day. I need to look her in the eye when the truth comes out." That night, I barely slept, rehearsing what I would say and how I would present the evidence. I wanted to be calm and methodical, not emotional or accusatory. This wasn't about revenge. It was about exposing a lie that had nearly cost me everything. Sunday evening arrived and Melody, Tyler, Jackson, and I gathered at my apartment to review our strategy one final time. We had compiled all our evidence into a presentation on Tyler's laptop, screenshots, photos, timelines, and witness statements from the restaurant staff and bridesmaids. Jackson seemed nervous but resolute, while Melody was practically vibrating with righteous anger on my behalf. "Remember," I told them as we prepared to leave, "let me do most of the talking. No matter how Allison reacts, we stay calm and stick to the facts." We arrived at my parents' house 30 minutes after the time they had told Allison to arrive, ensuring she would already be there. My father opened the door, his expression a mixture of concern and confusion when he saw our group. "Samantha? What's going on? Why is Jackson here?" "I'll explain everything, Dad. Is Allison here?" He nodded. "In the dining room with your mother. She still claims to be unwell." We followed him through the familiar hallway of my childhood home. As we entered the dining room, I saw Allison seated at the table, still sporting her fake baby bump under a flowing maternity dress. My mother was arranging flowers nearby, her movements stiff with tension. When Allison spotted Jackson, her eyes widened in surprise before quickly narrowing. "What is he doing here?" she demanded, one hand automatically moving to rest on her stomach. "Mom, you didn't tell me he was coming." "I asked them not to," I said, stepping forward. "Hello, Allison." The room crackled with tension as everyone took seats around the large dining table. My mother attempted to lighten the mood by offering drinks and mentioning the meal she had prepared, but her voice trailed off as she noticed Tyler setting up his laptop at the end of the table. "Before we eat," I began, my voice steadier than I felt, "I want to address what happened at the rehearsal dinner. Allison made some serious accusations that derailed my wedding and hurt a lot of people." Allison immediately adopted a wounded expression. "I only told the truth, Sam. I'm sorry it hurt you, but you deserve to know." "The truth," I repeated, nodding slowly. "That's exactly what I want to talk about tonight. The truth about your pregnancy." I gestured to Tyler, who pulled up the first slide of our presentation, a timeline of Allison's activities over the past 2 months. "Let's start with some basic facts," I continued, turning back to Allison. "You claim to be pregnant with Jackson's child. Based on the size of your bump, you appear to be about 3 to 4 months along. Is that correct?" Allison shifted uncomfortably. "I don't see why I need to discuss the details of my pregnancy with everyone like this." Humor me insisted. "When did this alleged relationship with Jackson begin?" "It wasn't a relationship," she said, glancing at our parents. "It was a mistake. One night after a family dinner when you were out of town for work." Jackson shook his head but remained silent as I'd asked. "Which family dinner, specifically?" I pressed. "Does it matter?" Allison snapped. "It happened. It matters because Jackson has never been alone with you after any family dinner. He's either been with me, with Tyler, or gone home directly to his own apartment. We have location data from his phone to prove it." My father leaned forward. "Samantha, what exactly are you saying?" "I'm saying that Allison is lying. About everything." I turned to Tyler, who advanced to the next slide, Allison's Venmo transaction with the special effects makeup artist. "This is a payment you made 3 weeks ago, Allison. To a theatrical makeup artist who specializes in prosthetics, including pregnancy bellies for theater productions." The color drained from Allison's face. That's not what that was for.
No?
Then what about this? Tyler advanced to another slide, showing the theatrical supply bag at Allison's feet during the bachelor party. You brought your fake belly to the bachelor party, planning to make your announcement there, didn't you? But something made you change your mind and wait for the rehearsal dinner instead. My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Allison, tell me this isn't true. But my sister remained silent, her eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. I continued, methodically presenting our evidence. The loose clothing purchases, the strategic social media posts laying groundwork for her pregnancy, the testimonies from restaurant staff who saw her transform in the bathroom before the rehearsal dinner. And finally, I said, reaching the last piece of evidence, the most damning proof. I nodded to Melody, who produced a small paper bag and set it on the table. This morning, we visited 3 pharmacies near your apartment until we found the one where you've been shopping. The pharmacist recognized your photo and confirmed you recently purchased this. I reached into the bag and pulled out a box of prosthetic adhesive specifically marketed for attaching fake pregnancy bellies to skin. The silence in the room was deafening. Allison's face had gone from pale to bright red, her breathing becoming shallow and rapid. Why? Asked finally, my voice breaking slightly. Why would you do this? Why would you try to destroy my wedding, my relationship, my trust in the person I love? What could possibly be worth all that? For a long moment, Allison said nothing. Then, in a movement so sudden it made everyone jump, she stood up, yanking at the fabric of her dress.
Fine.
You want the truth? Here's your truth. She reached under her dress and pulled out the prosthetic belly, throwing it onto the dining table where it landed with a dull thud among my mother's carefully arranged plates. Happy now? My parents stared in horror at the silicone form, my mother's hand still pressed to her mouth, my father's face darkening with anger. Allison Marie, he started, using her full name as he had when we were children in serious trouble. What in God's name were you thinking? But Allison wasn't listening to him. Her eyes were fixed on me, years of resentment bubbling to the surface. It's always been about you, hasn't it, Sam? Perfect Samantha with her perfect job and her perfect fiancé and her perfect life. Do you have any idea what it's like living your shadow? Always being compared to you and always falling short. This isn't about competition, I said quietly. This is about you trying to steal the man I love and humiliating me in front of everyone we know. Because you don't deserve him, she shouted, tears streaming down her face now. You don't deserve any of it. I've watched you coast through life getting everything handed to you while I struggle for even a fraction of the recognition or success. Jackson was supposed to notice me first that night at the charity gala. I was there too, you know. But as usual, all eyes were on you. The pieces suddenly clicked into place. You were at the gala? I didn't see you. Of course you didn't, she laughed bitterly. No one did. I was working it, passing out champagne like a servant while you networked and charmed everyone. Jackson came in, and I knew immediately he was special. I was going to introduce myself during a break, but then you swooped in with your perfect hair and your perfect smile, and that was that. Jackson looked stunned. I had no idea you were even there, Allison. You didn't see me, she said, turning to him with a softer expression. But I saw you. And I've watched you for 3 years, seeing how wasted you are on someone who can't possibly appreciate how extraordinary you are. The room fell silent again as the full extent of Allison's obsession became clear. This wasn't just about jealousy or competition. My sister had been harboring feelings for Jackson from afar for years, building resentment and creating an elaborate scheme to take him for herself. Allison, my mother finally said, her voice shaking, you need help. Professional help. This isn't normal behavior. Don't tell me what's normal. Allison shouted. You've always taken her side. Everyone always takes Samantha's side. There aren't sides here, Jackson said, speaking up for the first time. There's just right and wrong. And what you did was wrong, Allison. You lied to everyone, including yourself. I've never had feelings for you, and never will. I love your sister. That's the reality you need to accept. Allison's face crumpled, the last of her composure evaporating. "You'll see," she sobbed. "You'll realize I'm the one who truly understands you, who truly deserves you." My father stood up, his expression grave. "That's enough. Allison, get your things. I'm taking you home, and tomorrow we're finding you a therapist. This behavior stops now." As my father led a still sobbing Allison from the room, my mother turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Samantha, Jackson,
I don't know what to say.
I'm so sorry this happened to you both." Jackson reached for my hand under the table, squeezing it gently. "It's not your fault, Mrs. Johnson. Allison's actions are her own responsibility." After Allison and my father left, the rest of us sat in stunned silence, the fake pregnancy belly still sitting grotesquely on the dining table like an artifact from a horror movie. My mother eventually wrapped it in a kitchen towel and took it away, returning with a bottle of wine and glasses. "I think we all need this," she said, pouring generous servings. "Samantha, what happens now at the wedding?" I looked at Jackson, seeing the love and concern in his eyes. "We'll reschedule," I said with certainty. "But first, we need time to process all of this and heal, and make sure all our guests know the truth about what happened." As we sipped our wine and began discussing next steps, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and relief. The truth had come out, Jackson was vindicated, and our relationship had survived Allison's attempt to destroy it. But I had lost something precious in the process, my trust in my sister and the belief that family would always have my best interests at heart. What I didn't realize then was that the most difficult part of this journey was still ahead, deciding how to move forward with my relationship with Allison and whether forgiveness would ever be possible after such a profound betrayal. The week after the confrontation was a blur of phone calls, emails, and difficult conversations. Jackson and I had to contact every wedding guest to explain the postponement, careful to share enough of the truth to clear his name without completely humiliating Allison. We lost deposits with some vendors, though many were understanding and willing to reschedule. The beautiful botanical garden even offered us a date in September, giving us 4 months to regroup and decide if we still wanted the same wedding we had originally planned. While dealing with the logistics, I also grappled with the emotional aftermath. Allison's betrayal had shaken my foundation in ways I hadn't anticipated. I found myself questioning other relationships, wondering if I had missed signs of resentment or deceit from people I trusted. Sleep became elusive, my mind replaying the rehearsal dinner and confrontation on an endless loop. "I think you should talk to someone," Jackson suggested gently after finding me awake at 3 a.m. for the 5th night in a row. "A professional, I mean. This is a lot to process on your own." He was right, and 3 days later, I found myself sitting across from Dr. Tessa Harris, a therapist specializing in family trauma. With her calm demeanor and direct questions, she created a space where I could voice my confusion, anger, and grief without judgment. "What your sister did was a profound betrayal," Dr. Harris acknowledged during our second session. "But I'm concerned about how you're internalizing it. You keep asking what you could have done differently, as if her actions were somehow your responsibility." "Weren't they, though?" I asked. "If I'd been a better sister, more attentive to her needs and feelings." "Samantha," Dr. Harris interrupted gently, "your sister's choices were her own. You can acknowledge the pain and jealousy she feels without accepting blame for her harmful actions. Those are two very different things." That distinction became a cornerstone of my healing process. I could have compassion for Allison's feelings of inadequacy and jealousy without excusing or enabling her behavior. I could love her as my sister while maintaining firm boundaries to protect myself. Meanwhile, Jackson and I were rebuilding our relationship on more solid ground. The crisis had exposed vulnerabilities and assumptions we hadn't previously addressed. We started couples counseling, not because our relationship was failing, but because we wanted to strengthen it against future challenges. "I should have told you about Allison's strange behavior at the bachelor party immediately," Jackson admitted during one session. "I was trying to handle it on my own, protect you from more wedding stress. But in doing so, I created space for doubt. And I should have trusted my instincts about her behavior sooner." I replied. I saw the warning signs but dismissed them because I couldn't imagine my own sister would hurt me that way. Our counselor helped us develop better communication strategies and establish trust-building practices that would serve us well in the future. Slowly, the fear and uncertainty that had clouded our relationship after Allison's announcement began to dissipate, replaced by a deeper understanding and commitment to each other. My parents faced their own difficult journey. They were devastated by Allison's actions and struggled with how to support both their daughters through the aftermath. My father, who had always been Allison's greatest defender, seemed particularly shaken. "We failed her somehow," he said during a Sunday dinner about a month after the confrontation. "There must have been signs we missed, help we should have gotten her years ago." "Dad, you can't blame yourself," I insisted. "Allison made her choices." "Maybe," he sighed. "But parents are supposed to guide their children toward better choices. To see when they're struggling." My mother reached for his hand across the table. "We're doing that now, Michael. It's not too late." Allison had begun intensive therapy, seeing a psychiatrist twice weekly and attending a support group for people with what her doctor described as maladaptive coping mechanisms stemming from childhood comparison and rivalry. My parents attended some sessions with her, learning how their well-intentioned parenting had sometimes inadvertently fueled the competition between us. For the first 2 months after the confrontation, I kept my distance from Allison. I wasn't ready to see her, and Dr. Harris assured me that was a healthy boundary to maintain while I processed my feelings. We communicated only through brief, civil text messages, usually related to family logistics. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in August, I received an email from her with the subject line, "When you're ready to read this." The body contained a 12-page letter. A thorough, painful accounting of her jealousy throughout our lives, the development of her feelings for Jackson, and the slow evolution of her plan to disrupt our wedding. She didn't make excuses for her behavior but offered context and genuine remorse. The final paragraph read, "I don't expect forgiveness, Sam. What I did is probably unforgivable. But I want you to know that I'm working hard to understand why I was capable of hurting the person who has always been my biggest supporter, even when I didn't deserve it. You are my sister, and despite everything, I love you. I hope someday we can find a new way to be family again, with healthier boundaries and expectations. Until then, I respect your need for distance and will continue doing the work to become someone worthy of a second chance." The letter moved me to tears. Not because it erased the hurt, but because it was the first time Allison had fully acknowledged her actions without deflection or blame. I shared it with Dr. Harris, who helped me process my complicated response. "Forgiveness doesn't have to happen all at once," she reminded me. "It's a process, not an event. And it doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation or forgetting what happened." Over the next few weeks, I thought deeply about what forgiveness might look like in this situation. I wasn't ready to welcome Allison back into my life as if nothing had happened, but I also didn't want to carry the weight of anger and resentment forever. In early September, just 2 weeks before our rescheduled wedding, I invited Allison to meet me at a neutral location, a quiet cafe where we had often studied together in high school. She arrived looking nervous, but healthier than she had in months, her face free of the tension that had become her constant companion. "Thank you for meeting me," she said, her hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug. "Thank you for your letter," I replied. "It couldn't have been easy to write." "It wasn't," she admitted, "but it was necessary. For both of us." We talked for nearly 3 hours that afternoon, navigating painful truths and tentative hopes for the future. I explained how her betrayal had affected me, and she listened without defensiveness. She shared insights from her therapy, including the realization that her feelings for Jackson had never been about him specifically, but about what he represented, a chance to win something she perceived as valuable to me. "I don't expect to be part of your wedding," she said toward the end of our conversation. "I understand that would be asking too much." "You're right," I agreed. "That would be too much, too soon. But I do want you to know that I'm working on forgiving you, Allison. Not for your sake, but for mine. I don't want bitterness to define our relationship forever." Tears filled her eyes. "I don't deserve a sister like you." It's not about deserving, I said, echoing Dr. Harris's wisdom. It's about choosing to move forward, however that looks for us. 2 weeks later, Jackson and I were married in a ceremony that looked quite different from our original plans. Instead of the large botanical garden wedding, we opted for an intimate gathering at a small historic mansion with just 50 of our closest friends and family. My mother walked me down the aisle since my father had chosen to stay home with Allison, a decision I supported. Melody served as my maid of honor, and Tyler stood beside Jackson as best man, the two friends who had helped us uncover the truth and supported us through the aftermath. The ceremony was simple but meaningful, with vows we had rewritten to acknowledge the challenges we had already overcome and our commitment to facing future difficulties together. At the reception, my father made a brief appearance, embracing me tightly and whispering, "I'm so proud of you, Samantha. Not just for today, but for how you've handled everything with such grace." He handed me a small gift box containing a delicate silver bracelet and a note from Allison. "Wishing you all the happiness you deserve. With love and respect, A." It was a small gesture, but it represented something significant. The beginning of a new, more honest relationship between sisters who had finally stopped competing and started seeing each other clearly. In the years since that day, Jackson and I have built a life together that feels both stronger and more authentic because of what we endured. Allison and I have established a different kind of relationship, more cautious but also more genuine than before. We see each other at family gatherings and occasionally meet for coffee, carefully rebuilding trust one conversation at a time. The journey hasn't been easy. There are still moments when the pain of betrayal resurfaces, when I question whether true forgiveness is possible after such a deliberate attempt to destroy my happiness. But then I remember what Dr. Harris told me during our final session. Healing doesn't mean the damage never existed. It means the damage no longer controls your life. The scar remains, but it no longer dictates your choices or steals your joy. Those words have become my mantra. The scar of Allison's betrayal remains, but it no longer dictates my choices. Instead, it has taught me valuable lessons about trust, boundaries, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. It has shown me the strength of my relationship with Jackson and the importance of honest communication. Most importantly, it has taught me that forgiveness isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating space for a different future. If you've ever faced betrayal from someone you trusted, know that healing is possible. It won't happen overnight, and it won't look like you expect, but with time, support, and a commitment to your own well-being, you can move forward without letting the pain define you. Have you ever had to rebuild trust after a major betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and like this video to help others find their way through similar struggles. Thank you for listening. And remember, sometimes the most painful chapters lead to the most beautiful beginnings.